Today we'll learn an important concept called as ingress. Okay. So if you remember, we learned that there are almost 3 to 4 types of services. One is cluster IP, other one is node port. Okay. Third one is load balancer. There is also one external IP but that is not so important and it's not listed on the screen. Okay, so there are 3 types of services: cluster IP, node port, load balancer. Okay, so what happens in cluster IP is we create a service, okay, called cluster IP, and that cluster IP service means we directly interact with the cluster IP service, and this cluster IP service will redirect the uh, request to the multiple pods, okay, the pods behind that service. Similarly, in node port, what happens is we create a node port service, okay. It also creates one more cluster IP, okay, but a port is also opened on each node, okay. If we have 3 worker nodes, on each node a node port will be opened, okay, and then we access that node port, okay. In load balancer, mostly used in cloud, what happens is a service is created, okay, but an a public IP is assigned via load balancer. So this is the load balancer. This is the cluster IP service. On top of it, there will be a load balancer. Here also we have a service, okay, but this is also a cluster IP service. But along with the cluster IP service, a node port is opened on each worker node, okay, and here it is just a cluster IP which is accessible within the cluster network only. Okay, so suppose we have multiple services. Okay, service 1, service 2, and service 3. All three are cluster IP services. Okay, now for this we'll open and we know that the cluster IP service is accessible only within the cluster network. We cannot access it from the outside world. Okay, so to access it from the outside world, one option would be to open a node port. Okay, so like this, if you open a node port, that is a security risk, okay, because we are directly exposing the worker nodes. Okay, so this is not a recommended. Only for learning purpose we can do, for or troubleshooting purpose we can do it on node port. Okay, and if you go for a load balancer, this is a bit secured way, okay, but in load balancer what happens is for each service we'll have one load balancer. That means 3 public IPs. If there are 10 or 100 services, we'll need 100 public IP addresses. Okay, that is also not feasible. Okay, it is costly. Okay, so what happens in the what we can do is, or in a production scenario, we'll have the cluster IPs, and what we will do is we'll install an ingress controller. Okay, in the Kubernetes cluster itself we'll install an ingress controller. And what does the ingress controller do? It will do a reverse proxy. Reverse proxy means whenever the request comes to the ingress proxy, we have defined some rules that whenever a request comes to, remember we have defined some rules. Whenever request for comes for foo.my.com, mydomain.com, it we have written a rule that it will be redirected to this service. If the request comes to mydomain.com.bar, okay, slash bar, it will come to this request. Or if there is any other service, it should go to this service. The rules are written in the ingress controller. Okay, so if you see, the ingress controller is saving the, it is not exposing the node port, okay, the worker nodes node port, and it will not even have multiple load balancers. Okay, so public IP will be only one, okay, that will be mapped to the ingress. Okay, so we'll see that. And
Ingress is a different VM then?
no, it will be a controller just like a service. We'll install one more component called ingress.
Okay.
It
So
is not
that
a
will be
different VM.
on
That
only
will be
on
on the
them?
Kubernetes service only.
Okay, on Kubernetes
Yeah,
VM. Okay.
VM only, yeah. Or you can say on a Kubernetes cluster itself. Okay. So one more thing, the pod is by nature is ephemeral. Okay. So this is the DB pod. This is the my app pod, both have the IP addresses. Okay, but due to some reason, if get restarted, the IP addresses will change. Okay, that's why there is a need for a virtual service. Okay, so both will be having a service, both will be having internal IP, but both will also have a service. Okay, service for application, service for database. Okay, and the service, the IP addresses of the service will not change. Okay, on top of it, we'll be installing ingress. So in ingress, we define a rule. Okay, that whenever some request comes to myapp.com, go to this service, and that service will be redirected to this pod.
Pragya, one doubt.
Yeah,
So application gateway also does the same job, right, with the use of WAF. So can that be used? I mean,
that will be seen later. Okay, as of now, just concentrate on the ingress.
okay, okay,
Yeah, the similar service we also will be seeing, but you're right. It also does the same thing, but there is a slight difference. Okay, that I'll explain.
okay.
So we'll see practical on